Today we welcome our very special guest and homeschooling veteran Jennifer Bernhard for a really freeing conversation about homeschooling. As you know, homeschooling my kids is something that I'm very passionate about, and April is about to dive into homeschool as well. If you know someone who may be on the fence about homeschooling and needs to hear this podcast, please pass it on. Our desire is to encourage as many people as possible to cultivate their passions. We hope that you enjoy today's conversation with Jennifer.
This isn't about checking off the boxes, but this is about developing our children to be able to go and tackle anything they want to tackle. Our why, and especially my why, it's because I have my kids. I mean, to think that they're coming to me with their new information or to gain knowledge, and we're walking that learning walk together. Had you asked us 2 years, even a year prior to us homeschooling, he would have said, oh, we would never homeschool our children. Why would we do that?
This is April.
And this is Tiffany.
And you're listening to the Tea of Life podcast.
We hope that you enjoy listening today as we dive into this week's episode. Jennifer and I know each other from church, which is Woodstock City Church, where my husband is on staff and her husband volunteers on Sundays. So your husband, Jennifer, is also a musician, just like my husband, and he's also a professional drummer as well, right?
He is.
And so the two of them kind of struck up a friendship and then decided that they wanted us to meet, I'm assuming, so that they could maybe plan some time together to jam, right? So they needed a reason without feeling like they were leaving us out, right? But I am so happy that I met you because you are so sweet and I just love you to death. But you guys had us over for dinner and it was amazing. So then we recently joined a small group that you guys are also a part of. And this has allowed us to get to know each other even better as we do Life in Circles, which kind of sounds funny, doesn't it? So our church, actually, we promote having like our small group time. And we say that circles are better than rows. And so that just basically means that like building community in a small group environment. And so that's why I say we do Life in Circles.
Yes.
So I also recently shared a SCOBY with you.
Which we are loving.
Awesome.
The SCOBY. We've named it.
You have? What did you name it?
So one of my sons named the SCOBY Steve.
Okay.
But then my other son, who has been studying American history, named it Agent 355.
Okay.
So,
Okay. I'm going to have to look that up. That is awesome. Oh, you just named our SCOBY.
You just call it Scooby Dooby Doo.
Yeah. That's awesome. So have you made some more?
We have.
Okay.
We have. So we've just this week ordered a larger jar so that we are mass producing this now because the kids love it so much. We don't have sodas or those things in our house. And so this was, this is the new thing that they love to come in and just drink.
Yeah, that is so cool.
Very nice.
Awesome. Today's conversation is going to be about something that is very near and dear to my heart, homeschooling. And if you've listened to my story, which is episode 3, by the way, in case anybody's wondering, you already know that we are about to finish up our 10th year of schooling our boys at home. And I can't believe it. As I talk about in my story, which is episode 3, by the way, I didn't start out motherhood with the intent to homeschool. In fact, I was completely in the mindset that I was not going to homeschool my children, but God. And that's all I have to say is but God. And I was thinking that I want a t-shirt that on the front it says I plan, and on the back it says but God.
I love it. Totally, you need to copyright that right now.
I know, right? Because now I put it out there, right?
Put it out there.
So if anybody is walking around with that, I'm going to be like, you took that from me. Actually, I'll probably be more excited that they're actually listening to the podcast. Like, you're listening to my podcast also. But God. So, Jennifer, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am. I think first, anytime I say anything about myself, I'm first a mom to 3 kids. And because my family, I think right now, is everything. When I speak of myself, I so often speak of us as our family. So we just enjoy doing life together. We travel together. We learn together. And we're just in a really fun stage right now with our kids between 6 and 13. So every day is a new challenge, but also a new blessing. Let's see, I grew up just outside of Savannah, and I was a teacher by trade before coming home to be with the kids. And so now I'm still a teacher. I've just moved from a classroom of a lot of children who are not mine to my classroom of my 3 kids, and it's just wonderful.
Do you decorate your door like they do in the public schools?
I don't. But I do have cutesy, especially in my daughter's area because she's in kindergarten, and I have the cutesy posters. It very much looks like a little kindergarten area in her space.
That's interesting because actually one of my questions is, being a teacher, what made you decide to want to homeschool your children?
Well, it's funny. Our stories, I think, are very similar in the fact that we did not start off planning to homeschool. So I was a teacher first and then had worked into administration in a private school, a small private school. And my children were with me there, at least my boys were. I was at the school for just over 10 years, and they were with me. They had both been there for 3 years when the school closed. And so it wasn't necessarily us saying, we're going to try homeschooling or we're going to homeschool. It was, but God, which we now see as, his intervention in our story and his direction, rather, not intervention, but his direction in our story. And he led us to homeschooling. We were, as the school closed, we just recognized that one of the reasons that the boys were in private school was because I was working there. We wanted them in a private school, and without me working, we could not put them in a private school without 2 incomes. And I had a newborn. And so we just said, we looked at each other one day and said, we both think that this is the direction God's calling us and pushing us towards. Let's just try it for a year, see what happens, and go from there. And our decisions are year by year. And we kind of prayed about it and talked about it and thought about it and got really excited. And that is how homeschooling started for us. It wasn't a plan. It just happened.
That's awesome. So your husband was pretty much on board from the get-go is what you're saying? Or
he was.
He was part of that decision?
But what's so funny is, had you asked us 2 years, even a year prior to us homeschooling, he would have said, we would never homeschool our children. Why would we do that?
We are sane people. Why would we do that?
So, but whenever we did, with the thinking through things, with the praying, with the recognizing that schooling for us was changing and it was beyond our control. And I have a control problem. I'd like to control everything in our lives. But when we recognized that this was beyond our control, then through that season of prayer, we both just were like, okay, we were on board. Once the decision was made, he was 100% on board with me.
In the beginning, did you know exactly what you wanted to do, having that experience in teaching, or did you have to go out and figure out, like, as far as curriculum-wise, what you wanted to do and pull for your kids?
Oh, I was lost. I absolutely did not know what we wanted to do. We started out with the whole thought process of, I'm a teacher. I get paid to teach other people's kids. Surely I can teach my own. And so our first couple of months of trial was really me trying to create a school environment in our home. And that did not work.
Yeah. I completely know about that. Yeah, that's part of my story as well.
So that did not work. And we backed up, and we had young children at the time. So I backed up and thought, okay, guys, let's just think about something we really are all interested in and we want to learn about. And for several months while we were studying space and space exploration and the planets, I spent my waking hours researching and deciding, what is this I'm going to do?
So did you decide, I know that every child learns differently. How did that affect what you chose for your children? Did you choose something that all of them could learn by, or were you picking and choosing per child?
It wasn't per child. So we were on a field trip with a good friend of mine one day, and she had just decided to homeschool her children. And she put the title of a book in front of me, and she said, Jennifer, have you heard of this book? And it was called The Well-Trained Mind by Susan Wise Bauer.
Yes.
And I said, no, I've never heard of it, but tell me the name exactly how it's written and I will order it today. And I did. I went and picked up the copy as soon as I could and read it. And from then, everything fell into place. We decided that, we do want to school classically. It makes the most sense for us. Our boys, who are my oldest two, are very much alike in the way that they learn. And so that makes it lovely. So we didn't have to tailor our curriculum necessarily to their learning styles. We could choose and just move through the model with both of them. Now we're finding out that my daughter's very different. So
this is the kindergarten.
She's wrapping up kindergarten this year, and so I'm probably going to have to adjust a few things for her. Luckily I've had plenty of time to get my feet wet and to know what my goals are for them and for her, and so I'm able to adjust as we go. I just want to say that to me is such an important thing. I know for me and for many homeschool moms that I am friends with and talk to, they kind of jump in and think, well, this is the way it should go, and it never goes as planned. And you have to be okay with that. And you have to understand that doesn't mean that there's failure on your part, that you just have to drop back and punt and figure out, okay, this doesn't work for us. What will work for us?
And the beauty of that is that you can do that.
Yes.
And that is what is so different about homeschooling versus having them in a brick and mortar, is that you are able to adjust, because when they're in the brick and mortar, they have to learn the way that they are giving at that point, and there is no adjustment whatsoever.
Right. And then, like I said, we tried that. We tried the no adjustment. Here's the schedule. This is what we're going to do. And when it failed, I realized we don't have to do school this way. God called us to homeschool, but he didn't call us to homeschool as if we were sitting in a brick and mortar school.
Right.
And that was a beautiful life lesson to learn, and a beautiful lesson for all of our family. The kids were happier. I was happier to just step back and decide what works for us.
Right.
And that is really refreshing to hear, because if you'll remember in my story, I don't really remember if I said it in my story or not, how we're going to start homeschooling next year. And I get a little nervous about that. What does it need to look like? How long do I need to sit down and teach? And just the freedom, what you're saying to me just resonated like, okay, first I can breathe. We know we can do, we can take a subject and learn about it, and I can see where they're thriving. I already know what they like. They're my kids. I know my son likes math. He's more logistical. My daughter's more artsy and free spirit. So I know these things about my children, and I can help tailor make it, but it doesn't have to be so punctual that you lose the life, the family, you lose the life of homeschooling. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. And I think for us, the goal was that they were lifelong learners, that they loved to learn, that they would, find something that interests them and go learn everything they could about it. The goal was not, let's check off all the boxes so that you can graduate.
Right.
And that was a hard lesson to learn as a teacher, stepping back and realizing this isn't about checking off the boxes, but this is about developing our children to be able to go and tackle anything they want to tackle and anything that life throws at them, that they can just go out and learn about it and go from there.
I completely agree. I see how our sons are completely doing the same thing. And whenever they are interested in a subject, they completely just overindulge themselves to where sometimes I do have to reel them back and say, okay, there are some other things that we need to do here. But I love that. I love the fact that they don't see the limits on learning.
Right.
They just continue until they're done.
And they realize everything is learning. Like, you're out and about, everything can have a learning bend to it. And I was just thinking, like, for me, how do you make it feel like you're doing school? Like, if you're not, like, from 8:30 to 9 o'clock, we're doing spelling. Or do you have that type of thing?
I started that way. I did. I started that way with wonderful little schedules that I had done on PowerPoints and Excel, and I had everything laid out and taped around the room, and everyone was supposed to follow their schedule, and it doesn't work that way. Not in my family.
No, I did the exact same thing, and I don't even have a teaching background. Okay. And that's just how I thought it should be, and so I did the exact same thing.
So now school for us looks like on Wednesdays we drive about an hour each way for our piano lessons. And so history's done in the car, because part of our history for my older son, who's in 7th grade, is listening to lectures. And so that's done in the car. While he's waiting for his siblings to do their piano lessons, he's reading his literature. And so what we learned very quickly is School is not just 9 to 3 or whenever the schedule says it is, but it's really all day long. I mean, walking through the backyard with my daughter and identifying birds, or her, finding lizards and making a habitat and building, what goes in a lizard habitat. So learning happens all day, every day, no matter what environment you're in. And recognizing that for me, again, was another blessing, because we weren't stuck to a schedule. We couldn't, we were doing spelling, singing it, to go driving down the road, and not just from 9 to 9:20 when the schedule says we're doing spelling today.
Because maybe your mind is not in that space to learn whatever it is, spelling, math, at that time during the day.
Yes.
I know our listeners are going to relate, and they're like, oh, okay, I can do this.
Right.
I feel myself breathing. This is great. Don't edit that out. I'm breathing, guys. You can do it. Sorry.
I had the question here, how long do you spend on schooling every day? Because of that is really no time that you have set aside to school. And it's the same with us. We get up late, we sleep in, we get up late, we start when we start, and then we end when we end. And some days it may be earlier, and some days it may be later, depending on what we have going on outside the house. Our state, when you do like your declaration of intent,
yes,
there are laws and rules there that say that there have to be like 4.5 hours of learning per day. But if you look at the fact that life is learning, there is 4.5 hours of learning per day.
More.
Not even, it doesn't cut off with just the school kids. There's 4.5 hours of learning for me per day, especially now that we're doing this podcast and I'm learning how to edit all this stuff. It's just 4.5 hours of learning. And it doesn't mean that you have to be buried in a book for 4.5 hours. It doesn't mean that you have to be taking tests for 4.5 hours or doing 4.5 hours of homework or whatever. It just means learning. And so learning looks different for everyone.
That is so true. It really does. And I love that you said that your family sleeps in. We have a 13-year-old who is just growing. He's taller than I am now, which I never in a million years imagined. And he needs to sleep. He's extremely athletic. He's always moving when he's up, or his nose is in a book. And so his mind's always working. His body is always working. And we've recognized that if I try to wake him up before 8 o'clock, he's not going to have a good day. His mind's just not ready for that.
Right.
So he needs to sleep. And we allow him to do that because we just adjust his schedule for the day or week or whatever we need to do.
Right. For us, we are all night owls. And with my husband being on the road before, that's kind of who we are. All of us are night owls. We can stay up until, 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning and then sleep the next day. But that's our schedule. And I feel like if I were to put my kids in bed at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, with my husband's schedule, and they would never see their dad.
Right.
And so that is our lifestyle, and it works for us, and it's totally fine. So you have a homeschooling co-op, and you are now actually in charge of this co-op, from what I understand, right?
Yes,
Wow.
Yes, I am. I do have help, but yes, I am in charge of this co-op. So we joined this co-op 2 years ago. We had been homeschooling on our own. One of the big things I wanted to do whenever I brought everybody home, I wanted to do it all on my own. I did not want to prescribe to a box curriculum. I wanted to be able to pick and choose. That was the educator in me, of knowing what I liked and what I didn't like. And this program might have a great spelling program, but the reading might not be what I'm looking for. So I did all of the picking and choosing and putting things together. And I fought joining a co-op for so long, or joining a group for so long, because I wanted the autonomy to do everything on my own. And then we recognized the need for our kids to be in a classroom with other kids for various reasons. It wasn't socialization, but
Which we are going to get to.
which we'll talk to later. But I want to clarify that.
Right.
My older son was reading middle and high school literature, and what we noticed is that when he would get with other children who were homeschooled reading the same literature, he would have conversations with them about what they were reading that were very different from the conversations he was having with me. And he was asking and enjoying being in classrooms with other kids, but he very adamantly said, but I don't want to go back to a 5-day-a-week traditional school. And so we began to look for co-ops, and we had looked for different things and then found Grace Classical, which is what we're members of now. And it's just been a breath of fresh air for us. Grace is a group of around 30 families who have been schooling together for many years. We get together one day a week, and all of our children learn in their age group classrooms throughout the day, and then they take their homework home for the rest of the week. So it gives us the best of both worlds with having those academic conversations with peers, yet still having the autonomy to control a lot of what my children were learning and control our schedules. I did not want to be out of the house, 2 and 3 days a week. And I did not want to put them back into school. So we found this co-op, and it's just been a blessing. But we joined 2 years ago, and then I was asked to help administrate the school. And so now
And you always say yes.
I always say yes. Well, plus this was my, I went from a teaching into a school administration position. So this was my wheelhouse. I mean, I took it and I was like, okay, I can do this.
It's life-giving for you.
Yes, it was. And so for the past 9 to 12 months, I forget the exact timeline, we've been walking through incorporation and nonprofit status. So that has been a huge learning curve for me.
Wow.
And we are so close.
So, okay, now here's what I'm thinking of. I think co-op, and then I have hybrid schools.
Right.
What's the difference between them?
So for us, I can't speak to all co-ops, but I'll speak specifically to what we do. So for us, we co-op, we get together one day of the week to learn. We have the classes split up in their age groups, and they go to various academic classes with kids in their age groups. And they're taught by different teachers. So they're not taught by me throughout the day. How this is different from a hybrid is, one, we're not accredited.
Okay.
And two, we've designed our co-op so that the ultimate authority is the parent. And we typically name our dads, and not all families. I mean, it's individual to the family, but we typically see dad as the principal, as the ultimate authority, and then mom as the teacher, and any major decisions. We obviously, as homeschool families, mom and dad really do communicate a lot as far as what's going on and what's being taught, and what the needs are for the children. But in this co-op in particular, I loved the fact that the ultimate authority was the parents.
I like that.
So if the student's not doing as well in one class, let's say American literature, not completing their homework, or having struggling or having a hard time, then the teacher does assign grades depending on how they're participating in class. But then it really goes back to the parents. The parent's the one who is going to be issuing the transcript. The parent is the one who does, the final grades. So that I loved.
So you did mention the big S word, socialization.
Yes, I did.
We, as homeschool moms, always get the infamous question, what do you do to socialize your kids?
I talk with them.
And it's funny because anytime I ever get this question, I always know that the person who is asking is, number one, not familiar with what socialization actually means, or two, not familiar with homeschooling and are not educated in the homeschooling realm and what it all involves. That question really used to intimidate me, but not anymore. I know that now that my kids are older and I look at them, I go, yeah, I think we're okay. They are going to be just fine, and maybe even better than some of them.
Right.
So what do you think about socialization, and what do you do to socialize your kids?
Oh my goodness. Well, I think socialization, it's so funny. It's one of those misunderstandings, I think, in the community, in the homeschooling community, because you're right. It's one of the big questions. Well, how do you socialize your kids? Almost every time you meet someone who's not familiar with homeschooling in the homeschooling community, that's typically the first question that you're asked. What's funny is that our kids are with us all day long. And yes, they are not in a classroom setting with their peers, but they are in settings with people who age ranges are from infants to adults all day long. Our children go with us wherever we go. They have dinner at restaurants. They go to the park.
Right.
We've traveled with them. And so I think that even more so than children who are very comfortable socializing with their peers or discussing and talking and conversing with their peers. Our children, I see, as they're extremely comfortable in any situation. They can carry on a conversation with adults just as if they can carry on a conversation with someone their own age.
Absolutely. And that's exactly my thoughts on it. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, when we look at what socialization actually means, I had looked this up at one point, and Merriam-Webster actually defines it as to teach someone to behave in a way that is acceptable in society. And so when I look at society and I see what is acceptable in society, I think I do not want my kids to act in what is acceptable to society. I want them to be different. I want them to have character. I want them to stand out and be better than that.
Yes, absolutely. And I think we accomplish that through homeschooling and through setting the example as parents for our children and not leaving that example to be set by their peers.
Absolutely. And I know that, like, for what we do, whenever we go out and we do an outing or something, then there are, people of all races, of all economic status, and just all in the same group. And they are able to go out, all ages, and be able to be with them, talk with them. So I know that, like, if our children were to go into the school system that is close to our home, then they would be in a place that has the same economic status, because they're in the same neighboring hoods that we're in, and not of a lot of diversity depending on where we live.
Right.
And, stuck in a room with 35, sometimes 40, depending on what school they go to, other children who are the exact same age. They don't learn how to talk with different people at different ages, just like you were talking about.
And I think that goes back to the ultimate goal. What is your ultimate goal for your children? And as we go out into the world and send them off into college or to the workplace, we're not expecting them to just sit in a classroom and do work, or to just sit in a workspace and only converse with people their age or people like them. We really want them to understand that diversity and be extremely comfortable in the diversity of community.
When I think about socialization, think about, like, my husband and I, we go to a restaurant, we take our kids to a restaurant, and then we're always like, look the waiter or waitress in the eyes, give her your order. Why do I have to do it? We're learning manners. We'd say the same thing. Or when you go up to the counter, the fast food, Chick-fil-A, go up there and you're going to order yourself. So you engage in that conversation. Or, when we're out of the playground, why don't you go ask, what's her name? Do you ask her, talk, so it's like, just common sense to me says, go put your kids in an environment, teach them how to engage, teach them how to be respectful.
Or even if you don't know them well, look them in the eye and have a conversation, because you're going to have to do that. That's a life skill.
Right. It's a life skill.
Although I did read something recently that made me kind of change the way I think about those teenage years, because I was dreading those teenage years, dreading what was to come. But reading this, it was taking the focus off of what could happen and what society says is going to happen, and putting the focus on our goals for our children, and that goal for us being heart change, and them having, being able to go out and to be the best they can be in this world, and to know that they are loved by God and they have a purpose. And I think for me, understanding that I shouldn't be fearful of the teenage years, but to treat them as this precious gift
that's a good point.
Working towards their heart change would be, it helped my mindset of being the teenage years. It's actually a book, and I'm going to have to look it up for you.
Okay, I'll put book. Get book name. Okay.
All right. So your children are also involved in sports. So how does that work, since they're obviously not with the school system in those sports? So there's a lot of things that are available for homeschool kids.
There are so many things available in our area for homeschool children, from sports to academic teams. And I mean, if we tried to participate in everything, then we would not ever have academic time at the house. But for us as a family, our younger two children are involved in the area recreational sports. And so they enjoy that. Our oldest son did that for a long time until just recently. And we found out that in our area there's a hybrid school that allows homeschoolers to come in. A hybrid school meaning these children, it's an accredited school. They spend 2 days a week in a brick and mortar, and then the other 3 days at home homeschooling. And they allow homeschoolers to walk on. So he did that for the first time this year, and we've loved the program.
That is awesome. And I know that there's like tons of other things out there available that we could sit here all day probably and talk about it, as far as things that are available in our area. And I know that not all of our listeners will be in our area, but that's just something that you can just find on the internet. Like you can find all kinds of extracurricular activities, sports of all kind. I know that there's football, baseball, cheering. I mean, there's all kinds of homeschool based extracurricular sports that they can be involved in,
as well as band, choir, speech and debate. I mean, there are so many avenues to have these kids plugged in wherever they're interested. Robotics. For me, it was just a matter of spending a few afternoons reaching out to other families who homeschool to find out what they're doing, and searching online. I have a love-hate relationship with social media. But I did. I spent some time on social media looking for groups in the area, homeschool groups, and found a group that does all across the Southeast. They do field trips. And so you can jump in and do field trips with them.
And they do so many field trips that if you were to do all of those, you would, like you said,
would
you would never
home.
have time to be home to do your academics. Yeah.
Yes. So I use social media to my advantage in finding what is available out there. And word of mouth is huge. Finding a group of homeschoolers in your area just for that support and finding out what's out there, what you use. I've had so many conversations about, well, what do you use and how does it work? And then you go and research that, because there's so many resources available to us these days that you would spend all of your time trying to research each and every resource. So I use moms and dads, but I really do use conversations with moms to find out, how can I plug in here, or what do I need to do here?
Yeah, there really are a lot of things out there, and even curriculum-wise, it's extremely overwhelming, especially for someone starting out like April and trying to figure out what they want to do and how they want to do it. And I can guarantee what you're doing this upcoming year is not what you're going to be doing for. So just get that out on the table. Just, yeah. So, I mean, it may change every year. You just never know. It just depends on your children and how they respond to what you're trying to teach them.
That's a good point. That's a very freeing thing to say.
And she said that, we just kind of took it year by year. And that's exactly what we did in the beginning and still do. But now that we're, of a ninth grader, I kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel. I don't see why we would change what we're doing because it's working for us right now. And so we had actually, a couple of years ago, changed and started to do something different just because I felt like I wanted to kind of pull out of what we're doing and do the more traditional homeschooling. And my oldest was like, Mom, I'm not thriving. Like he just wasn't thriving, and he just wasn't challenged enough. And I felt like I could not give him the challenges that he needed. And so we ended up coming back to this. But, and they love it. They absolutely love it. And we use it to our advantage all the time. I'm not going to put anything in the recording that is going to. Yeah. So anyway, there's a lot of question about, should I do an accredited homeschooling program? Should I not do accredited? What's the benefits, drawbacks, college transcripts? I think that is kind of a big question for everyone. I know that when I went a couple years ago to the homeschooling convention that we have here in Atlanta, there were colleges literally set up in booths just down the line, just lobbying for homeschool kids. And they literally were just, handing out literature, wanting the homeschool kids to come to them. And I think that we are really nervous about the fact that we may not get into college, or may not get into a good college. What if I have to go to a small community college, kind of thing. And so what are your thoughts on college?
Well, I started out the same way. Coming from an education background, I thought, well, everything everything that we do especially in high school, needs to be accredited because we need to go to a good school. And I quickly found out over the past few years that that's not the case. more and more colleges are recognizing homeschoolers as being very diverse learners. And not, and so in learning that, in colleges learning that these kids are really diverse learners and very motivated learners, they are opening doors and being more and more accepting of homeschoolers. And so as far as accreditation goes, my thoughts that we have to be accredited have kind of gone out the window. And now I think for us, it's just walking a walk of where our kids, what avenues they're going to go into, where they want to go. And as we come closer to that, then deciding, do we need to accredit their work? And so I would just encourage anyone to starting that homeschool journey to hold on to their work, because there are avenues to go back and privately accredit those, not through an institution, if you find you need to do that. I don't think that it's a need for everyone. I think it's as most things, a child by child basis. If you find the need to accredit work, then there are avenues to do that. If you don't need to accredit their work, then you don't have to. One of the big things in our area right now is move on when ready. And another avenue that we found, and I think that the door has been open for homeschoolers, is dual enrollment. And I know that even in a lot of public and private schools, they're using this option for their older students who are ready to go on to college classes. Well, our homeschoolers can do the same. And with dual enrollment, then to me, it almost, if that is the avenue for your child, it almost takes away the need to accredit your work because they're in a college setting. They're proving that they can do the work. And so wherever they decide to go beyond that, if they decide to go to a larger school, they've already proven themselves.
We've gone through your homeschooling adventure.
Yes.
We've talked about...
and it is an adventure.
It is a constant adventure. But it's a great adventure. It's so rewarding, not only for the kids, but for us as well. I feel like I have learned so much through homeschooling about myself, and I have told April and other people many times that I feel like homeschooling is just as much for me as it is my kids. If I'm trying to build character in them, I'm building character in myself as well throughout this homeschooling. And there are times where I feel like I may be homeschooling not even for my kids, that it's, I'm doing it because there's something that needs to change in me and that I need to do this for whatever reason.
Yeah. Would always joke about sending them to Christian schools to catch my slack if I don't teach them about the Bible during my own everyday life. And so how do you do family devotions?
We don't. I tried to, and we just kept finding ourselves in so many different directions. Now, my sons do have devotional time, and I try to do that with my daughter. So that's always been one of our goals, is to sit down as a family. But again, with kids in different directions, it doesn't necessarily work. However, it is so woven into their spiritual growth is woven into what they're learning. Okay. They learn our history through a Christian worldview, their literature. We speak about Christian principles in their literature. So it's woven into everything.
That is so freeing, because we were talking about, I think Tiffany and I were talking, or maybe it was another friend at church who's homeschooling. She has a teacher background, and she was talking about maybe looking into, a hybrid school, and whether it be Christian school, to get the Bible. She's like, I don't know if I necessarily want them in a Bible. Like, they get it from her, and it's not like, here's page 3 of math, and they just throw a scripture on there. There's real, like you're saying, their spiritual growth is woven in between whatever you do. So it's not like just because this little paper, this math page that has 10 problems on it with the scripture at the bottom, or their Bible time. So I guess my wheels spin, so I'm like, I don't have to sit down from 9 to 10 and do Bible.
You don't have to. No, I will say I have loved the days that we are able to sit down as a family. Right. And there are some days as we've walked this journey, there are times that it's necessary. The kids have experienced something or something that they're reading in their literature, and it just requires, hey guys, let's come sit down and talk about this. And that's, again, one of the things that's so freeing about not having a schedule taped to the door is that you have the ability to bring everybody in and say, oh, wow, Ethan, you just experienced this. Let's talk about that a little bit. And now what can we learn? What does the Bible say about that? And so, from our walk, how should we go out now with this knowledge or with this new understanding through a Christian perspective? How should we go out and handle this next time? So again, it's not, and I love devotionals, and again, it's always been a goal to sit down as a family and do a family devotional. But I think that just like learning takes place everywhere you are and all day long, so does that spiritual journey.
That's true. That's a good point. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Because I think as the first time, I think in the beginning I'll have a schedule because I love schedules. And whether it be to just get that out, I can check that. I've done that. The schedule didn't work. I'm okay with it not working, but I at least have to have a vision.
Try. I did too.
So, and then also it's like I need to make sure that they're getting this set of milestones or this. I like checking things off my list. It's like, are you supposed to learn the alphabet? Check. Are you supposed to learn, whatever grade? Are you supposed to learn spell? I like seeing that to make sure that I'm keeping them on task, because I guess what it is. So I think that's why I want to choose curriculum that lets me know that I'm keeping them on task. I'm keeping them. They're not going to be stupid by the time that they're 12th grade. I'm just afraid that I'm going to mess my kids up.
Well, and let me encourage you that is so funny that most moms who I run into who've not tried homeschooling, or they considered it, or they not considered it at all, but when they hear I'm a homeschooler, they feel the need to explain the reason why they don't do it, which is fine. To me, education is such a personal family choice and decision. But my teacher background has not helped me become a better homeschooling mom. Being mom to my children has made me a good homeschooling mom to them, because I know them. If you were to send your children off to a classroom, you still know them better, even though the teacher's with them all day long. You know them better than anybody else. So that, I think, in and of itself has made or is what's most important. Not your background, not how much education you've had, not what you know about this curriculum or that, or this subject matter or that. It's just you're their mom. You know what your goals are for them. And then from a year to year, or even a day to day, talking about scheduling, I'm a big picture thinker. I like to step back and look at the big picture. So I would encourage you to think about what your end goals are for your first year. And that way you won't drive yourself crazy checking the boxes every day. You can go, okay, what are my goals for these children, and each individual child? What are my goals for this year? What do I want them to know? And also, whose standards are you living by? When you say they need to know this by the end of third grade, well, who said they need to know that? What standards are those? And so think in that direction too. Do you want, like for our daughter, she's finishing kindergarten, and my big picture goal for her this year is that we would finish kindergarten knowing how to read, or at least with a basis for learning how to read, and simple addition facts and subtraction facts if we got to them. But she's a different learner. My boys were reading by the time they were in kindergarten. She's different. And so we just had different goals for her. And whenever we got into the day-to-day, the worry that, oh my goodness, we haven't done this week and we needed to get this done, then I could still step back, look at that big picture goal and say, you know what, we are moving in that direction. We're going to complete this. We're going to get there.
I like it. Because I do find myself going, okay, again, breathing. I felt like I've been holding my breath for a while. And then when I'm hearing you say these, okay, you've been doing this, Tiffany's been doing it, means both of you, it seems to be this common thread. There's freedom in how you teach your kids, what you can do with your family time, and how you make the most out of that family time, which is what is missing in other educational systems. But also that I can do it. Like, I'm feeling empowered. So I know that our listeners are going to be like feeling empowered. And I've renamed this topic to a really freeing conversation about homeschooling with Jennifer.
So I think that is a good lead-in to tell us, what is your why?
Our why. Well, and I say our because I think of this journey as a family journey. This isn't mom decided to homeschool and this is what we're going to do. It's definitely a family journey. And so what's interesting for me and for us is that our why changed. When we first started homeschooling, I told you a little bit about the story, we felt like we were kind of, pushed into this decision to homeschool. And so for us, it was, well, let's try it for a year because we don't have our kids enrolled anywhere else and because we can. Let's try it for a year and see what happens. And I would say when we started out, we thought, okay, we can do this for a year, but we weren't thinking we can do this for 10 years or until everyone graduates and goes off to college.
Right.
So our why changed. And now I would say that our why, and especially my why, it's because I have my kids. I mean, to think that they're coming to me with their new information or to gain knowledge and we're walking that learning walk together. To think that I would send them out and not be a part of that, it's just this learning journey is so important to me. And it's so important that we fill them with everything that they need to go be the best people that they can be and to go find their passion in life and fulfill their needs through finding that passion and through helping others. And so to think that I would put that responsibility on someone else and not have a say in it, I can't imagine that.
Right.
So for me, the why is because I feel responsible for my kids and I want to be responsible for my children and I want to be there to help them through these journeys and help navigate education and young adulthood and then also time. We love having the kids there. We love having time together as a family, even if it's a stolen moment. My husband works from home, so even if it's a stolen moment during lunch where he's off of conference calls and he can come down and in the middle of the day we can all be together and have lunch together, that time. And then we love to travel. So I love the schedule, the school schedule, because we tend to travel when everyone else is in school.
Right.
So I don't go anywhere in the summertime unless it's the beach. But when we especially wrap in and everything's a learning opportunity, but when we travel for school or for learning, then we schedule it off season and we just enjoy that time together. And it's so precious. I was looking at my son who's taller than me and is 13 and looking at him the other day and thinking, wow, I can remember bringing him home from the hospital and thinking, oh my goodness, we're going to break this little guy. And it's a blink of an eye. And so I only have so many more, so many days left with him and so many years. And I don't want to give him to someone else for those.
I completely agree. I completely agree. And I think that our whys probably run parallel with each other, just hearing that, because with us being Jesus followers, you would probably be surprised at how many whys did not make the list because of that. And it's not because I'm afraid of what the school system is teaching them. Right. It's not because I'm afraid that my son is going to learn about evolution or that he's going to learn about whatever. Like, I'm okay with that. And I actually think that they need to learn that because they need to be able to learn what they believe and to figure out their faith and also to be able to talk to other people who do believe that.
Yes.
And so I'm not afraid of that. I'm not afraid of bringing that into my home at all. And that is not why we do what we do. And so I think that, character, like I said before, and just because I love my children, I love being with them, and it breaks my heart every year at the end of the summer when people are like, oh, I can't wait till the kids go back in school. I'm just counting down. And I think that breaks my heart because I think I cannot imagine having to put my child on the bus or taking them and dropping them off somewhere because that just absolutely I just can't imagine. Even if it was at a Christian school or a private school or whatever, I just can't. And it may not be for everyone, and that's totally fine. Like you said, everybody walks their own journey with their schooling, and that's totally fine for each and every family. It's different. But I can't imagine that because I love my kids. I love being with them. I love having life with them. I love, just being with them all the time.
Yes.
And now, don't get me wrong, I do need my quiet time. I do need to kind of pull back and I just need somebody to not talk to me for a moment. And like, just some silence, please.
Yes.
But at the same time, I know, like you said, in a blink of an eye, that's going to be gone. And I'm going to be saying, I wish somebody would just talk to me.
Yes.
So I try not to wish it away too much.
I know.
But I love it. I can't imagine not doing what we do.
And I think that's really important what you have said. You shared your why, but you've also said if it doesn't work for you, listener out there who maybe needs to put them in the public school, or that's not their why, might be different. They want to put them in the public school. I get that. So I just, thinking for whatever reason that you feel called to whatever platform to put your kids in, whether it be homeschooling, whether it be public school, just know your why. Be your child's advocate. Be family oriented and be engaged.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. No matter where they are.
Right, no matter where they are. No shame. I just didn't want to put stigma on like, I can't homeschool my kids because I have to work. I'm a single mom. I have to work. So it's like,
right.
You do what you need to do for your child, but stay engaged.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We, and like I said, it's such a personal decision that I would never look at another family and go, oh my goodness, you put them where? Because it's so personal. And again, as mom and dad, you know them better than anybody. So you are the ones who are advocating for them in whatever scenario you're in.
Absolutely. What kind of advice would you have for someone who is actually thinking or have already decided that they want to homeschool, but they have no idea where to start?
First, take a deep breath. Take a deep breath and then start researching. I think there are so many avenues to find out what kind of homeschool you want. Do you want to school classically? We know people who unschool. There are so many types of homeschooling that are out there. So I would say first, find out what all of these types of homeschooling are, what avenues you have available to you. And then most importantly, as you're researching those things, I'd say figure out what kind of learners your children are. What do your children need? Because sometimes as a homeschool mom, you might want something, a particular curriculum or to learn this way so badly, but then it doesn't fit with the kind of learner your child is. And so learn what kind of learner they are.
Yeah, and be flexible.
Don't put yourself into a corner that you can't get out of.
Right.
Like feeling like you need to check the boxes. Be okay with throwing the schedule out the window and even changing curriculums midstream because they don't work.
Control freak me. What?
Yes. No, you might find that they just don't work. Everything that we're finding with my daughter who's just finished kindergarten, everything that worked for our boys may not work for her. Our boys love to sit down on the couch with a good book and talk and read. And she is, when can I be finished reading? Because I want to go catch lizards outside. She's great. Just, if I put her in a
which is odd. Normally it's the opposite.
I know. So we're having to figure that out. But be okay with that.
Right.
Be okay with that. The decision that you might not have a decision right now, but you're working towards finding them.
Right.
And then think about your goals. What are your ultimate goals for your children? What, and those goals can change from a yearly basis. And then what are the yearly goals?
Absolutely. And, I think about too, like, what is my ultimate goal? And that reflects back to our why. But I think, what is my ultimate goal here? Like, when my kids are out of school, what do I want them to remember most about being homeschooled? Is it that mom yelled all the time because, I wasn't getting my work done? Or is it because we were more relaxed, that I was able to learn at my own pace? Or because we had more family time and we were able to laugh a lot?
Right.
Or maybe we just sat and watched a movie in the middle of the day sometimes. And that's okay. It is okay.
It is okay.
It is absolutely okay. And I think, too, that I'm noticing now that my ninth grader, he does not really have a hard time with time management because he is learning to, these are the things that he needs to get done. And you have to have them done by so-and-so time or date. And he can look at that and he can say, okay, I have this to do and I have this much time to do it in. I'm going to play a game here and then I'm going to go back to work, or, I'm going to go sleep and I'll get up early in the morning to do it. And he's making his schedule. But as long as it's done by a certain time, then I am learning to let go and say, you can do this. And so now he's in 9th grade, completely making his schedule, learning at his own pace, and thriving at doing that. And yeah, he's completely on his own with learning.
And isn't that a goal for him? Because you can't follow him to college or into the workplace and make sure that he wakes up on time.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
Or gets there on time,
Right.
or finishes a project under a deadline. So that's a goal. And I think that's, when we look at those ultimate goals for our kids, whether or not you checked all the grammar boxes in 2nd grade doesn't necessarily always affect those end goals.
Right. And even with what we do, there was at one point where the spelling program was not working for my son. And so I ended up researching and figuring out what he needed, went and did our own thing, and totally fine. You being home with your kids all day long, for some parents that
And you look amazing, not like frazzled or anything like that.
Always put together. She's always beautiful. Absolutely. I know that for some parents, they probably just gasped just now when I said that. So how do you find time alone for yourself? What do you do to rejuvenate yourself?
Well, I'm just now finding the answer to that in my schedule. But I think even just getting out, it was so hard for me in the beginning. We're finishing our 6th year of homeschooling, and the first 4 years, I had a young child, and it was hard to get out. It was hard to find the time for myself, but it is so important. And so now, even just scheduling a tea date with a friend, going to meet for a coffee or a tea, or getting out for a good walk, I find that, and it might not be scheduled. It might be in the middle of the day. We're having a hard day. Nothing's going the way it was planned. Then mommy needs to go walk the dogs, or just go walk by myself around the park and come home. And even that 10 minutes, I think you just have to learn to find it. I wasn't good at that at first, and now I am. I'm finding even just 10 minutes away gives me time to rethink, to kind of refocus on what's important. And then come back in and be a better mom and a better teacher.
And I bet when you do come back in, things are not crazy and chaotic.
No.
Like your kids are just, oh, hey.
Right. They are. The house is not blown up.
Right. Everything is fine.
Everything's fine. They've gone about their business. They're finishing work and doing what they need to do. And then, and then we're all happier. We're in a better space.
Right.
Okay, so as I was stalking you last night, just to try to get an idea of who you were, I saw that your son and your husband are going on a mission trip. So that made me excited. And I was thinking about how else do you sprinkle mission type activities into your homeschooling lifestyle? Or do you?
No, we do. We don't necessarily call them missions. It's not a formal, most of the time. We just sprinkle it through with the understanding of helping others. It's not that we call it missions. We just, when we see a need, and we teach our children, if they recognize a need and we feel like we can do something about it, then that might be part of our calling to do something about that need. And so we just, if people need something, we'll try to help out. If there's someone in the neighborhood who is sick or isn't capable of doing something, we might have the boys, ask if they need anything. We might take them a meal, and they see me doing that, and they help prepare those things. We also started last summer, there is a summer lunch program for children who are living in poverty. And when they're at school during the year, they get lunches, and that's typically how they get their meals. So this program feeds children during the summertime who normally might not get a meal. And so the boys help participate in making lunches, in delivering those. But this mission trip, this is actually the first mission trip for our family. Our son's been asking for a couple of years, and he's finally hit the age where he can go off on a mission trip. And he chose to go to a Navajo reservation in Arizona, and he and my husband will be going together for various construction projects. So he's very excited about that trip.
Well, and I see that you guys are still trying to raise money for that.
We actually are fully funded.
Oh,
The money should be coming through soon.
Very cool.
So yes, they are fully funded now.
Sweet. Okay. I was going to put a link up there and invite you to fund them.
Thank you. But I will say
awesome.
that we are fully funded as far as Paul and Ethan. I know that they're going with a group of 30 to 33 people. And so there are, the group as a whole are still working to raise money. And then, through our church, we just have such a great organization that works through our church to send people on missions and to help you connect with missions. Even if you can't go, you can help support them. And I love that. I love being connected to our world and to people in need and knowing that we can help, even if they're half a world away or a few states away. We have the ability to help them, and teaching our children that we have the ability to help them, and we can.
That is so cool. That's so exciting. And I know that this is going to be something that he's going to remember forever. Well, Jennifer, we have thoroughly enjoyed having you here today. And I am so excited that you were able to come and that we're able to hear your story. And I really, really hope that this resonates with a lot of other moms and dads who may be thinking about homeschooling and have any questions. I really hope that this kind of pushes them over the edge, because that's where my heart is, and I know that's where yours is too. Even though we know that everybody has their own journey, that's fine, but we just really do have a heart for that. But thank you so much for being here today. I really
Thank you for having me. This was so much fun.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
That's it for today. Tune in next time as we continue to dive into life.
In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. You can find us at teaoflifepodcast.com or follow us on Twitter at teaoflifecast. Until next time, in the words of Monty Python,
Make tea, not war.